Thank you so much for making some time for us this afternoon. We're really looking forward to the presentation and some time to share some of the things that we've learned in the industry in terms of end-user adoption of technology. We're going to stress today that there's a lot of making a technology initiative work. We're not going to be spending so much time on project plans and requirements gatherings and things like that. We're really going to be talking about things that really affect the end user and that adoption issue. So just to be clear, that is the pretty much sole focus of today, and there's a whole body of other information that could be provided in some of the other aspects of technology development. So to start off with, you kind of, this image I really liked a lot. You think of technology in a lot of ways, for many of us, it's a blessing, it's a curse all at the same time. We can spend an enormous amount of time, money, and effort trying to get technology that we all believe will be effective to meet our business needs. And in the reality, when it actually finally hits the pavement, the traction it gets is often not what we had anticipated. And so unfortunately, not all IT implementations succeed. We know that. And it's sometimes even hard to remember things that actually really did go as planned. And so today really is all about, how can we reduce the feeling we get from this image of saying, hey, we tried, we bought it, we did it, and at the end of the day, it just wasn't making it. So as Justin kind of mentioned, we're going to keep the objectives kind of, high level here. I mean, we really kind of want to talk about some of the reasons that the IT implementations fail to meet their expectations to gain adoption. We're going to identify just some general key drivers that can be used to kind of use as a filter to kind of look at areas where we can improve on those implementations. And then we're going to kind of present 6 areas or best practices, things that you should maybe be considering. Maybe you do many of them, maybe you do all of them. And they're all very interrelated. So we're going to kind of talk through them and then ultimately give talk through some examples and some stories of how implementation of these practices was successful in various cases. Before we get started, though, we thought that it makes sense to even just talk a little bit briefly about ways to kind of even define some things that happen when we work with technology. There's a difference, I think, between installation, implementation, and then integration. And installation is basically saying, hey, you got it up and it's working. We kind of like to define implementation of saying, hey, it's actually being used to meet kind of the business needs. And then really a true integration, I think the best measure ultimately would be kind of the technology becomes invisible and it really just becomes part of what we do and how we do work. So, the bulk of this kind of presentation is really going to be around that implementation side. How do we make sure that it gets used so that we have a chance of kind of getting it to that fully invisible state? There's no doubt, technology takes months of planning and preparation, often large teams, lots of people, thousands, even millions of dollars. We work closely with internal groups or external vendors, implementation consultants. We gather up these requirements, we plan, et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately, we just kind of come up close. I mean, it's out there, and it's just not quite making it. And actually, statistically, if you are making it, you are the minority. There's a load of research around this, but the typical statistics are around this, that better than half of any IT initiative is over its initial budget at inception by the time it actually is implemented. And a full 84% of them fail to meet the original target date. So again, if you are out there and you are delivering on budget, on time, you are clearly the minority in the world as far as implementing technology is concerned. So, what are some of the causes? And so what I'd like to do is just, if you guys would help me out a little bit here, I'd like to just ask you the question, can you give me some things, some brief just ideas or concepts around things that have led your technology implementations to not meet their expectations? So I'd ask if you could just enter some of those items into the chat window, I'd appreciate it. just give you a second to type those in.
Well, Dave, it looks like a lot of scope creep so far. Changing scope, scope creep, end users changing their requirements. That's a great one, Dave.
Oh, that never happens. Come on.
Not setting expectations clearly. That's a great one, Darren, as well. Lack of awareness realities. Yeah, that's very true. Not having a clear understanding of really what the realities are. End user expectations are greater than those that were communicated. That's a very good one, James. Lack of end user input and use cases. That's another good one as well. Management not managing expectations for the sponsor. Money. That's a good one. Poorly executed training and new skills. Lack of attention to process. Yeah, these are all great ideas. So many good things that we would definitely agree. Oh, yep. Stakeholders. Business is not technologically savvy. Yeah, Dave. I mean, these are all great things, right? I mean, these are things that we see all the time.
Yeah, and again, so the list the list is large of all the kind of the little details, and these are all our battle scars from all the work we've all done collectively out there. So you've already mentioned many of the items that we had kind of thrown on the list. Little no executive support, data problems, unrealistic expectations, project management not being done well, training, communications, et cetera, et cetera. But if we had to kind of bullet down to maybe the single biggest reason that kind of encompasses it all. I think this quote does a nice job of some research that a man named Jim Shepard did a bunch, a couple hundred ERP projects, and ultimately it came back to this. The single biggest failure of these ERP implementations is the need for change management. The need for change management is not likely to be recognized until it is too late, and then the changes required to the corporate culture are likely to be grossly underestimated. And my favorite bit is really the grossly underestimated, because in too many situations, if you build it, they will come is the expectation, and in reality, that's just not right. So maybe we need to think it differently. Maybe we need to stop thinking of technology implementations as IT projects, and really kind of moving that focus to think of them more as people projects. And what are some ways that we can really do that? And ultimately, the way we kind of envision this is through a filter of what we call the 5 key drivers of high performance. There's a lot of models out there, and many of them are meaningful, make a lot of sense. But this is one that we kind of particularly like and think is relevant in terms of the presentation for today. So ultimately, we have these 5 areas, which are focused and aligned leaders, a skilled and motivated workforce, an integrated talent management system, a culture of continuous improvement, and the ability to use technology in an enabling kind of way. And if we can kind of have an understanding of where we are in each of these 5 dimensions and excel in these dimensions, we ultimately can have a high-performing organization, which ultimately can do a great job of executing our business strategy. And so a lot of the best practices we're going to talk through today are going to touch on one or more of these different key areas.